7:40. Well, news that funding for TVNZ will be discontinued and Parliament's recent decision to scrap the TVNZ Charter has raised many concerns about the government's future commitment to public broadcasting. There's also been the freezing of funding for Radio New Zealand as well. All this will be the focus of the fourth session for the Unitec Forum for the Future. It's called Reinventing Public Broadcasting. It's going to be held at the Unitec Theatre, Building 6, Entry 1, Carrington Road, Mount Albert, this Thursday evening, as I said. And one of the panellists is David Beatson, who is and has held many high-profile positions, including interviewer and presenter for Eyewitness News, executive producer at Radio Pacific, and chief press secretary to Prime Minister Jim Bolger as well. He joins me in the Kiwi studio. Good morning to you, David.
Good morning.
Nice to have you in. Now, What are we really talking about here when we talk about public broadcasting?
I think that's a very good question, because I think a lot of people haven't really defined that.
No.
What it's not, in my view, is public service broadcasting. In other words, the old way. The way I came in and grew up, quite frankly, when it was one government department and it was run like a government department.
Like the BBC or something?
Well, it's not like the BBC, because the BBC ran on a charter and it always was fairly independent. But when you were actually government-owned and you were very much under the thumb of the government, it was pretty tight.
Yeah.
And I think that what we're talking about is public broadcasting services. That is, services that are accountable to the public. They're independent from undue influence by politicians or commercial interests, for that matter.
Was the charter
very important?
Was the charter public service?
It had public service intentions in terms of what it defined Television New Zealand's mission was going to be, or what it should actually pay particular attention to. But in fact, it really made very little difference to what Television New Zealand did. Television New Zealand, actually, its primary mission was to survive in an increasingly competitive commercial environment. It had to do what it had to do. And quite frankly, it wasn't really going to bend itself too much to accommodate a lot of the minority interest duties that a public broadcasting service would normally perform. Diversity is part of the mix. You've got to dance with all the audiences, not just one audience, not just the 25 to 59-year-old commercial consumers.
Yeah. Would you say that TVNZ7 was a pretty good attempt at public service broadcasting?
Yeah, it was a beginning. Just remember this, that it never got any grunt behind it promotionally. It was a lot of recycled news, a lot of extended interviews that had been lined up as part of the standard news package. It had some interesting and innovative original programming in the middle of it, produced by the independent producers. And it's a shame that there is no future for it at the moment, post-June next year.
Yeah.
Gone. The family-friendly advertising-free channel, TVNZ6, gone.
Yeah.
You might like what it's been replaced by, Channel U. I don't know whether you watch Channel U.
Not a major fan.
No, not a major fan.
But it means that we now have a clean slate, don't we? We have we're totally starting from the beginning once more for TV.
Well, actually, we're approaching ground zero, I think, is about what I'd call it. Fundamentally, we've been drifting away from. We never really defined since 1989 what the real public broadcasting mission was. It's just progressively imploded over time, and I think that we're at the stage where it's make or break. And quite frankly, I'm a maker, not a breaker.
So, okay, being a maker, where do we start? How do we build up a public service broadcaster again when the will doesn't seem to be there from the government?
You've got to remember one thing, that there is still a residual base in Radio New Zealand. Crown funded, Frozen funded. There's still a residual base in New Zealand On Air. Again, Frozen funded. I don't think cryogenics is the way to fix broadcasting, quite frankly. If you want public service broadcasting or public broadcasting service, you've actually got to sit down and say, okay, what is it going to bring to the mix that the commercial stations won't, the commercial channels won't? And what it brings to the mix is actually diversity. It brings universal access. It's very important that it's universally accessible on all media, not just one media. It shouldn't be put in a silo, you know? And it has been up until now.
The criticism, though, from, say, the current broadcasting minister is that it's for pointy-headed people. It's for people who like intelligent talk, and it's only a small minority.
Well,
in the population.
that's rubbish, sheer rubbish. It's not for pointy-headed people. If you're talking about making programs for Pacific Islands communities, you're talking about making programs for Maori communities to reflect Maori into mainstream society. You're talking about a whole range of programming that simply will not get airspace in a totally commercially driven broadcasting environment. But they don't fit. They attract minority interest audiences. Sure, they're not big audiences, but actually today, ratings are a load of cobblers. They are, because you know and I know that a lot of people actually listen on demand. They select what they want from what's been broadcast, and they listen to it later when it suits them.
And it's not,
all that sort of thing isn't measured.
It's not measured at the moment. No. I'm not allowed to talk about that. But anyway,
aren't you? Well, I thought you were pretty multimedia here. And you're doing it everything.
Yeah, exactly.
You're on the internet. You're streaming. You're presumably texting and twittering at the same time and doing all those things.
But let's get back to that basis. Okay, that is Radio New Zealand. How do you then start a fully fledged public service, including on the tally, from that basis of having a...
Well, in a way, you've begun the process here, where you stream from the studio on web. Now, there's one way of doing things. I'm saying I believe that there's a huge resource of talent going through Radio New Zealand studios every day. Now, some of that can be captured and put on television. It's a resource that's there. You don't have to pay for it all over again. It's there. You can actually make television programming around that. I'm not a great believer that you just simply plonk a camera in the studio and let everything go out on a television channel. I don't believe that's going to work too well. But you certainly can't ignore the huge resource base that's there. And I think that Radio New Zealand itself has to reinvent its future. It can't just sit there preserving in aspect the old traditions of the wireless anymore. It's got to be more than that.
Let's talk about that, because so its funding was frozen, and an independent audit was done, and that said that funding in fact needed to increase over a certain amount of years. But here's my opinion on that. That auditing was done on the basis of what the current management at Radio New Zealand considered was applicable to run a radio station, and so the certain systems that they...
You'd love the money they got, wouldn't you? You'd love the money they got. A lot of money. You're talking about
money that they've got.
$20-30 million to run essentially 2 networks.
This thing's run on this station here, run on a complete. We got no marketing budget. We're down to 3 staff basically, and a few volunteers and whatnot, and some NZ on air money. And the output of this station,
you're the model of the future. We've all got to get used to working that way. I work that way when I work on Stratos Television. We go out and make our programs in what used to be someone's front room.
You're a host, you're a producer, you're a director, you're a camera person. Right? Yeah.
You got to be multi-talented and multimedia focused.
But some would say that the quality of programming may perhaps go down if people are spread far too thin.
It could do, and that's going to be a danger, always. But the blunt fact is we can't afford the old Rolls Royces.
Right.
They're just too expensive. The way television functions today, it's just too expensive for a society the size of New Zealand, with the mammoth amount of contest for your mind going on out there. 158 channels are accessible in New Zealand if you've got all the bells and whistles in terms of your home reception.
Plus the internet.
158 channels already, and rising.
Plus the gaming console, plus the internet and the rest.
And the internet's going to... And broadband is going to completely multiply the range of options again.
Yeah.
I believe that local is the answer.
Yeah.
Be local.
So the rumour...
Take pride in your own society.
The rumour did come out last week. I don't think John Drennan at the Herald had the full details, but the rumour that Radio New Zealand could be turned into some kind of TV channel. What do you know of that, and how far down the track are
I know a proposal has been put to the Radio New Zealand board.
Right.
I'm not sure that it's gone further than being received at this point. I think there's a lot of water to go under the bridge before that can become a reality. And I think the notion that you can make a satisfactory television channel simply by putting cameras into a radio studio when radio has to be fluid. It has to be changing all the time. You can't guarantee a guest is going to turn up. You're shuffling, you're juggling, you're doing all those sorts of things. And quite frankly, television will have a hell of a job keeping up with it.
But isn't that the reinvention of television?
Yes, it is. It has to be, in part. But it's. I think that you've got to take into account what the viewing audience actually expects. And today they expect a very rich media diet. They like to see things done properly. You don't have to be perfect. You've either got to have highly original and compelling content, or you've got to have highly original, compelling creativity in the presentation of it.
There's got to be something said for warts and all, though. As well.
Yeah, true, but I mean,
and honesty.
Frankly, I don't want to watch warts all the time. Do you? That's really entertaining. Watch the warts grow.
Well, you'd hope that it wasn't all warts, but you'd hope that perhaps there was something a little bit more honest about a channel.
Well, I don't know. You see, how thin can you stretch people? How much? What are they going to pay attention to? Are they going to pay attention to serving their radio audience, which is their primary task? Or are they going to pay attention to what are the cameras doing? Where are they? What are they doing now? People got to be allowed to focus on their core job. You want a good job.
Left brain, right brain hemisphere comes in.
Yeah, well, I know you do everything. And both hemispheres. If you could add a few more, north, south, top, bottom,
yeah, exactly.
You've probably got them.
David, it's been a pleasure having you in. The forum is happening, of course, this Thursday. It's going to be an interesting discussion. You've got some other panellists there as well at the Unitech Forum for the Future 2011, Reinventing Public Broadcasting at the Unitech Theatre on Carrington Road in Mount Albert. 6:30 p.m. It all kicks off as well. David, thanks very much for your time.
Cheers.